Don't take this the wrong way, but you are almost certainly a weirdo. And I'm going to prove it to you by asking you 3 questions. First up, how many wine-producing countries can you name? I'm going to give you a second. You can have a bit of a think about it. We don't need an exact number. You can round it up or down. Now, would it surprise you to know that according to the market research company Wine Intelligence, wine drinkers in the UK, which is one of the world's most generously served wine markets, on average can name just 10 countries that produce wine. South Koreans can name only 5. In the US, wine drinkers can name only 7 countries that produce wine, and they're one of them. Here's another question. How many grape varieties do you enjoy? Again, have a run through in your mind and give yourself a general number, 10, 20, 30, more. Now, if your first language is English, then the chances are that you've done quite well, because in the UK, US, Australia and Canada, wine lovers claim to drink around 6 different grape varieties. Yet it's English-speaking countries who claim to drink the widest variety of different wines in the world. In China, wine drinkers on average can name only 3 different varieties they drink. Among other countries looked at by Wine Intelligence, wine lovers averaged around 5. And finally, do more knowledgeable wine drinkers spend more on wine? You'd perhaps think so. The wine business has been arguing for years for greater awareness and education. But not necessarily. Now, we're dealing with some broad brush statements here, but older wine drinkers, on average, know more about wine, but on average, spend less. Younger wine drinkers know less about wine, but on average, spend more. Why? I mean, we need to investigate, but perhaps to younger drinkers, knowing less means the most reliable, perhaps the only reliable indicator of a wine's quality is its price. In fact, Wine Intelligence found that over the last few years, most people in most countries have become less knowledgeable about wine overall. Perhaps that's because now wine is just part of everyday life. Perhaps because now you can always look up information about wine on your phone, on an app. We're going to delve into all these subjects and more over the course. But for now, we need to focus on a hard truth, summarised here by Luli Halstead, the COO for Wine of Wine Intelligence. For all of us that work in the wine sector, if we do a reality check of normal people, most normal people have a very different relationship with wine than people in our sector do. The people you're talking to are, in Luli's words, normal people. Whereas you, me, your colleagues, probably many of your friends, we are the weird ones. What do we mean by normal people when it comes to wine? Well, it's sometimes said that in most countries around 10% of wine drinkers are knowledgeable and engaged, and around 90% just like to drink it. They might like wine, they might like to spend a lot on it, they're just not that bothered about knowing lots of things about wine. As we'll see a lot in this course, there are variations. For instance, Sweden, where I live, where I'm talking to you now, is often cited as a country that has a much more highly engaged group of wine drinkers on average. Other countries are less than average. It's a distinction known as optimizers and satisficers. Now, you find optimizers and satisficers in every industry, every product. Cars, makeup, audio equipment, trainers, sneakers, television, and wine. Across all those industries, you tend to find around 10% of people buying a product are optimizers and 90% are satisficers. You can read more in the notes that come with this session, and there are a couple of articles that I've written there too. Optimizers are people like us, like you most probably, people who enjoy knowing about the product, who enjoy discovering more about the product, and, this is important, people who are happy to take risks to find the best possible product. But most people in most product sectors like wine are satisficers. It's a portmanteau word and it combines satisfy and suffice. These are people whose goal is not necessarily to find the best, but more a guarantee that it will be satisfactory. Actually, it's more a guarantee it won't be shit, if you'll forgive my language. They're not looking for the finest Merlot. They just want to be absolutely sure they're not buying a terrible, shitty Merlot. Wine insiders like us are optimizers partly because we know a lot about wine. And that's known as the curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is a cognitive bias. It occurs when we're communicating with other people, like our satisficer customers, and we assume they know as much about wine as we do. That's why it's also sometimes called the curse of expertise. The problem is we know and value so much about the product that we're selling. We'll say it's a fabulous vineyard and the vines are very old and the producer is a local hero and the wine was enjoyed in the 19th century by Queen Victoria. In fact, the phrase the curse of knowledge was coined by three economists, Colin Cameron, George Lowenstein and Martin Weber. They wanted to test the assumption that better informed marketers and salespeople, us, could anticipate the judgments of less well-informed customers. That's the 90% of wine drinkers that we sell to. They suspected that we, the insiders, couldn't. They even suspected that if marketers and salespeople who were less knowledgeable than we are were to try and do our job, they might actually be better at selling the product. And in their research, they found that it was true. If you know a lot about wine, it makes it harder to sell that wine at a price that the customer who doesn't know so much about it feels is acceptable. Equally, our greater knowledge makes it actually very hard for us to understand the value that normal people often find in cheaper, lower quality, if you like, wines. Wine experts like us, we tend to overvalue what we think higher quality wines are worth, and we undervalue what 90% of wine drinkers think that lower quality or better value wines are worth. So, how do you tackle this problem? How do you deal with the fact that you're a weirdo selling wine to normal people who value different things than you do? Well, that is the subject of our next session.